I'm really interested in, I guess, how that you can go into a business and work to alleviate the stresses in the environment. So, address a negative organizational culture. And really, I'd like to focus on why, as a leader in the business, you'd want to invest in the changes. Why do we want to even value these? Why do we care? And if we've got too much work, why worry about that? Isn't that a good thing? Don't we want just like everything we can get?
Sometimes the simplest questions have the trickiest answers, don't they? So if we were a textbook, one of those $8,000 self-help management courses would probably pop out with a simple answer that said, the purpose of leadership is to create a productive culture. But, when I talk to people, and I've talked to people even yesterday, you begin to wonder whether a leader creating a productive culture is the exception rather than what everybody's out there doing. And the two people I talked to yesterday, one of them was a board advisor for New Zealand Stock Exchange listed boards, and she's very seasoned and talked about all the issues she saw in the top tier companies in this country when it came to leaders creating a productive culture. And the second person runs a small fencing factory over the other side of the river from me here. So it's as small business as you can get. And he was talking about his very small team having cultural and productivity issues wrapped around that cultural stuff. So I realised, when you asked me that question just then, that building a productive culture and that being the core job of a leader, that's basics, but it's not basics we always get right. And, when you sort of try and break it down, if your business gets the best out of people, then most workers only really have three questions of you as a leader, which is, what's my job? How am I going on that job? And what's my future working with you? So, your question's a good one. When you start breaking it down, it's clear not many of us have got the recipe right. But when you think about what that recipe is, it's pretty easy. Then you reflect back, how many leaders have I actually had that made it very clear what it was that they needed me to do, made it very clear how I was going in the short, the medium, and the long term, and then gave me a clear vision of what the future holds. I don't know about you, but it feels quite rare.
Yes, I agree. I think, in my experience, feedback can be really lacking. And I think leaders are often caught up in their day-to-day, like they're really busy. And so they don't look outside their own headspace sometimes and what they're scrambling to keep up with themselves, and recognize the value in giving you that bit of feedback, because it just makes a world of difference, doesn't it?
It does. And then you think with these leaders, when they say something like that, do you forget to put oil in the company ute? And they say, oh no, I wouldn't forget to do that. Do you forget to lubricate the CNC lathe? Oh no, I never forget to do that. That would be awful if that ever happened. Do you forget to clean the loading bay of the last delivery before the next one comes? Oh no, we never do that. We need our raw materials. Well, if we don't forget those things, why do we forget the basic oil and lube of our workforce, which is about making sure that we get the people understanding what's the work of their role, how are they going with that work, and what the future holds for them.
Yes. So, people tend to make changes when they're uncomfortable or something's not working. So, you move away from the discomfort or you make a change. If something's broken, so, you keep your tools working, your equipment working. So why don't leaders recognise that in their people?
Yeah. Well, this is perhaps where it's simple, but then it gets complex when you start thinking about the simple stuff and how you apply it. So most people would say that there are three sets of tools that we have as leaders to get the best out of our human people. As you know, thinking about humans as part of that business process. One of them is that we have systems. So they're the ways, the recipes by which things get done. We have some symbols, which are the things that can tell us what our place is, what type of business are we working with, what type of people are we working with. And then we have the behaviours. How am I meant to conduct myself in the workplace? What are the things that I'm not meant to do? And when you've got those three tools, when you bring the lean consultants in, if that's what you choose to do, those consultants actually have a different perspective than you would as a business leader, and different perspective than each other on what those tools look like in your specific workplace, in your specific culture. And most consultants will say to the business leader, all you actually need to do is get rid of the things that are counterproductive and help the team members and the leaders in your business to become productive. And if you distill all those years worth of lean courses that many people might have heard of or gone to down to the basics, you're taking stuff that's counterproductive and you're making it productive. And I use the word counterproductive instead of unproductive because they still make you money. So it's not like they're unproductive, but they're doing something that gets in the way of you making more money or making that money simpler or being able to scale up to deliver even more with what you've got. So the different consultants, they've got different experiences and they'll find you different things. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment you just get a parade of consultants in each with a different perspective to help you change your culture. Changing your culture is your job as a leader, but these people can at least open your eyes to things that you may not see.
Being a leader in a business, I think somebody could put a lot of pressure on themselves to fill that role, or what they think that role is and behave in a certain way. So as a leader, is it that it's seeing that it can be done differently and it's not what what you imagined?
And that's a very good point. That's a good way of looking at it. A bunch of leaders, though, might even take it a bit further and say, well, I've got this counterproductive culture, or there's aspects of my culture that are counterproductive. What's my vision of what this new productive culture might look like, and how do I share that vision with the team, with the workforce? And when you look at an existing culture, there are going to be mythologies, and mythologies are things that people believe, but they may or may not be true. So, there's going to be mythologies about the work, there's going to be mythologies about the organisation, and there's going to be mythologies about you as the leader or you as the business owner. So, when you think about the behaviours in these mythologies, they're what leaders do and what leaders say, and they can certainly contribute to stress. You're not doing it right. You're costing me money. You're doing it wrong. Those things are behaviours that the leaders show, and the team members generate some mythologies. I can't fail. I need to hide errors. There are the systems, the way that things are done, or the way that we do things that can contribute. So a good example of a system that might be counterproductive, I need 3 quotes to buy a new pen. Those 3 quotes cost me $180 worth of lost opportunity of that workforce to save 30 cents from a pen.
So some of the systems those processes that might be in place, sort of recognising that that's not going to add any value.
And, the symbols then are those non-verbal messages. They can be counterproductive. Where does the boss sit? Does the boss sit near the entranceway where people tag on and tag off to do their timesheets? Or does the boss sit really remote from the workplace, the gemba? And if you've got a problem, you need to transit 20 minutes across your factory floor to go get the boss and get some stuff done.
So how does the boss get that balance right? Because I've seen that where they're so busy, they're not, I guess they're so busy because they're not good at delegating. They try to fix everything. And so they move their office to a less accessible location within the main building, so that people can't walk in and talk to them because they can't get any work done because they're trying to do it all. And you have to go through admin and they call, and have them call through to see if they'll allow you in. Like, what does that tell people?
Well, that's a very strong symbol in those cases, and that symbol is you're on your own.
Figure it out.
So, perhaps a few examples then when we break it down. The behaviours that you're describing there, a bunch of behaviours about upwards delegation, the leader making the call, and then the team member executes. And you think about what the waste is there. The waste is the untapped human potential. I'm paying for you to make some judgment calls and provide your skills, your labour, your experience, your knowledge, your aptitude, your attitude, and only using half of it. And that's probably being optimistic. So, if you don't let the team make errors, you're the only one who's allowed to make an error, then the team's not going to work out themselves what works well and what doesn't work as well. And improvements limited to the rate that the leader can think up and execute improvements by themselves and drive that change through the business.
Yes. So how would a leader make their workforce feel comfortable and know that they can make mistakes and come up with those ideas themselves, and that they're not going to, be penalised?
I would be an awful consultant if I suggested the leaders could make anyone do anything. It's about encouraging the right behaviours, rewarding and recognising them, and then differentially rewarding and recognising the counterproductive behaviours. And even the words counterproductive instead of wrong, that tells a story. It's quite a call it a red negotiation tactic to say someone's wrong. You're wrong. It's a much more affiliative or blue behaviour to say that looked counterproductive. Is there a way that we could do this differently? Can you think of something that we could use to make that problem that looks like it's here go away, even better, go away for you and everyone else in our business? So, how do you help the leader? Well, a technique, and there's more than one of them, is something that you mentioned to me just before the call, which you talked about it being uncomfortable with the status quo as a driver of change. The fancy psychologist types call that cognitive dissonance, that you feel less satisfied with how things are now, and you want to remove that dissonance by changing to something that you feel more comfortable with. So, a leader can create cognitive dissonance in their workforce. We've got a lot of waste. We can get rid of that waste. We have the skills. We have the will. I know each one of you has the capability and the knowledge to do that. Let's unleash it and see where we can go. You can create some cognitive dissonance, some energy in a less positive way, a more negative way. The market's awful. We are fighting for survival. We can't stay where we are now and all keep our jobs. Let's go and do something different. And they're the two end points. There's plenty of space in between the two where you're blending the two tactics together to just help the team direct their energy into a useful change. You don't want them floundering around with their arms waving in the air saying, what do I do now? No, you, as a leader, you have an idea of this future state culture that you want to have in your business, and then help the team anchor themselves that that's something that they're willing to stand behind with this dissonance energy that you've created. With that, though, there comes a trap that a lot of leaders have fallen into in the past, which is, I call it the consistency or predictability trap. Now, a leader that's consistent is a leader that the teams begin to understand. Now, you can be consistently awful, but being consistent, that if something good happens, then the team would expect this set of behaviours from you. If something appalling happens, then there's another set of behaviours. It's where a situation happens and the team can't predict whether you're going to act like this or you're going to act like this, that you end up with that very negative culture. People become fearful. They don't tell you stuff because they can't predict what you're going to do.
You need to be consistent, very consistent.
So you meter your own behaviours so that when something happens, there's a stimulus. Your response as a leader is at least predictable. There's been a problem, right? Well, my leader, when I go to my leader and say there's a problem, the first words out of their mouths may be, no, that's serious. Let's stop, work out what the problem is. Why is that a problem? What should we do about it? Well, I give you the authority to go do that then. That's consistent and predictable. If you go to the leader and say there's a problem and the leader sometimes says, I'll help you, and the other time say, I'm firing someone, that's that counterproductive culture coming out.
So that lack of consistency in response really reinforces your behaviour very strongly, doesn't it?
It does. So, you don't want to create the negative symbol that only the leader can help you solve the problem. You want that consistency of, if we're solving the problem together, then that's what the team member will expect. The team member expects that the big problems are solved together and the small problems are delegated to the team member. Well, that's what the team member goes in expecting. Well, this is a small problem. I'm going to come out with a task to address it. So Lean gives you some rituals. Those rituals create predictability and consistency. Being hard on waste, that can be very predictable. We had some scrap. Okay, why was the scrap there? What can we do to lower it from 5% to 4% to 1% to 0.1% to 0.01% over time? And with consistency comes that persistence. So you're picking the cognitive dissonance that you want the team members to have and the direction that you want the culture to go. And unless it's obvious to everybody that that's not the right thing to do over time, you stick with it. When you create dissonance in more than one way, or you have what looks like more than one objective that you're trying to drag the team to, that consistency falls over, and the persistence, people begin to wonder whether it's just a flash in the pan. So, you don't persist when it's clearly something you've tried and not working, but, wherever you can, you pick a direction and you stick to it. When you get to that destination, you and the team can pick a new direction to further improve on top of that. And I know you and I recall Daniel with his great videos. He hasn't done this one yet, but I'm sure it's coming, where you're pushing a rock up the hill, and you keep pushing the rock up the hill, knowing that the hill is endless and the rock's pretty much going to be the same size. You don't change the direction of where you're pushing the rock until you've got to the point on the hill where you've decided to get to. Then you pick the new path from there. So a good mental model. We wouldn't change direction hauling a rock up the hill. we shouldn't change direction on our culture unless we're clearly heading in the wrong direction and everyone knows it. There's plenty of techniques that work with this, and different consultants will give you a different set, but that is a simple one that was just on the top of my head then.
So that's interesting, because it sounds like there's a lot for a leader to learn, like to then have the benefits in their behaviour flow on to the workers and to the people doing the work. That can't happen without the leader making the first step.
That's right. So when I think about leadership, it's like being a parent. For those who have been a parent, there isn't an instruction manual that works that tells you how to generate great kids. You learn as you go. And being a leader is a lifetime learning experience, and changing culture. It is easy to understand, but very hard for a lot of us to do. A lot of us, that cognitive dissonance within ourselves of why should we change our own behaviour? I've been doing an insert job here for 30 years and it's been successful. Why do I need to change now?
Yeah, I must be getting it right. I'm still here.
And, that's where the counterproductive instead of unproductive becomes really useful. Of course, you're getting the result.
Mm-hmm.
But are we getting the result you want? Or are we getting the result we could be? Most of those leaders would leap at the chance of you increasing their free cash flow by 50%. In some businesses, you can get that by removing 5% of the waste.
Yeah, so is that it's just starting simply by going in and mapping out a value stream and then seeing the opportunities there?
And when you think about Daniel as a practitioner, that's a piece of standardised work that he would do, a value stream map of the process. People like me just go in with the business leader, or even better, a random team member, and just do an unstructured walk around the workplace, the Gemba, and you can feel a lot of the culture by observation. If the place looks like it's used to do brain surgery, you've probably got a culture where everything has its place and waste isn't, or production waste isn't an obvious thing. But the less obvious thing may be that workforce doesn't have the authority to initiate improvement changes. And stopping by the lathe and safely asking the operator, when was the last time you can recall making a change? Oh, it was last Thursday. Where did that idea come from? Oh, it came from the boss mate. Then you can talk about that untapped potential. It's not counterproductive, or it's not unproductive, but it is counterproductive.